Today we'll be looking at creating a Vikings concept art in Photoshop, using some quick and easy fantasy photo manipulation techniques. You can find everything used here today over on Envato Elements, where you can get unlimited downloads of graphics, photos, and fonts, millions of creative digital assets with simple commercial licensing. I'm Abby Esparza with Envato Tuts Plus. Let's get right into it. Start with assembling a quick, fiery sunset background. We'll be adding a strong blur to the whole environment, so don't worry about overly stretching images or doing any precise extractions. It'll be a waste of time here. So let's drop our first sunset sky over onto our canvas, making sure it fills the entire width of the canvas. If there is a space at the bottom of the canvas, however, that is perfectly fine. Next, a second deep red sunset image, place over the first and set to screen, which should fill up any gaps that the original image might have left. If there are any harsh edges, you can go ahead and remove them using a layer mask, but it's likely unnecessary, as like I said, we're going to be blurring all of this out. Now we can quickly extract some large snowy mountains from their backgrounds. I used the object select tool and a layer mask to extract mine, and then I did a touch of refining using select and mask, just enough refinement so that the edges aren't overly jagged and there are no visible edges of the sky. Again, there's no need to be precise here. With the mountains cut out, let's right-click Convert to Smart Object. Then we can place our mountain's peak towards the bottom of the canvas. Go ahead and add a layer mask and use a soft round brush to blend the bottom of the mountains into that red mist. We can also change the mountain's layer to 50% opacity. Once happy with the mountain range, let's duplicate the layer, flip it horizontally, and add a smaller mountain to the left side of the image. Let's place it slightly further back, making it smaller and bringing down its opacity to just 30%. This will make it appear further off in the background. Also using a soft round brush to blend the image into the mist, just like the larger mountains. Make sure to make any final adjustments to both of the mountains' placements, as they will be harder to adjust from here on out. With that mountain range done, we can add in some final lighting. Go to Select Color Range and color pick the brightest portion of the right side mountain. Adjust the fuzziness value so that only the brightest areas of the mountain face are shown in white. Everything that appears in white will be what is selected. I ended up with a fuzziness value of around 40 to 50. Create a brightness contrast adjustment layer. The layer mask will automatically take the shape of the selection. Let's set the brightness contrast setting to 10 brightness and 50% contrast, brightening the inner face of the mountain. Now create a hue saturation adjustment layer with the settings of hue plus 29 and a saturation of plus 67. Then we can hold Alt and drag and drop a copy of the brightness/contrast layer mask onto the hue saturation layer mask. That'll give our mountain a subtle hint of color, reflecting off of all that bright lit snow. Then we can go ahead and repeat those same steps to give a bit of color and brightness to the smaller mountain face. Now let's tie in all of our background elements with a color lookup adjustment, set to tension green at 26% opacity. Finally, let's group all of our background layers together and then right-click Convert to Smart Object. We can finish off the background by adding a filter blur gallery field blur. We're setting the blur to 20 pixels. And then the bokeh to 26% light with a light range of 34 to 255, though you can experiment with all of these numbers. Now finally onto our Viking portrait. Extract your Viking using whatever your preferred method is. I like to use the pen tool and a select and a mask mixture, but any way will work. Whatever gets the job done works perfectly fine. Once we do have our selection, let's create and clip a brightness contrast adjustment layer into the Viking portrait, setting the adjustment layer to plus 20 brightness. Now let's duplicate the Viking portrait layer, bringing it below the original and setting that layer mode to screen. If it has a layer mask, go ahead and first right-click Convert to Smart Object and then set the layer to screen. Now create and clip a soft golden yellow color fill layer into the duplicated Viking layer. We're going to use the transform warp mode to pull on the duplicated layer, making it so that the parts of the yellow peek through from behind the fur parts. Then we can create a layer mask on that yellow layer, filling it with black using Ctrl-I, which is invert, and then mask back in areas of yellow behind the Viking. Focus on bringing in the bright yellow on areas with either cloth or, as I said, fur. Doing this creates a super quick backlighting effect. If needed, you can repeat those steps to create even more backlit hair or fur, especially in areas that may have missed out on that first round. And once you're happy with that initial backlit hair, create a new layer below them and set it to screen. And then using a soft round brush and the same pale yellow color, let's finish up the fur by adding in some extra glow. Then we can paint in some simple blood drips and splatter onto the Viking's axe and body. I have a whole tutorial on how I like to paint quick and easy blood that you can check out on Envato Tuts Plus as well. With the Viking portrait finished, we want to make him stand out. So we're going to introduce some vibrant reds, oranges, and blues into the sky and surrounding areas. So first, let's create a new layer set to multiply. Now using a soft round brush set to a low flow rate, just 5% or so, paint blue on the blue portions of the sky, orange on the orange portions, and red on the red portions. Focus on the outer portions of the image, keeping the middle of the image bright. This will darken and deepen the sky, so we want to avoid going too dark. However, if you feel it is a little too dark, you can always just lower the layer's opacity. Now we're going to repeat that same step one more time, only this time on a layer set to overlay, using the same red, orange, and blue colors and the same soft round brush, with that flow rate low. Next, let's bring some of those reds, blues, and oranges into the subject himself. First, create and clip a new layer into the subject and set it to multiply at 70% opacity. Then we can paint in some shadows using a dark red color, focusing the color on the inner part of the subject. With those shadows laid down, we might want to bring back some of those highlights. So let's double click the layer and adjust its blend if settings. Go ahead and hold Alt to split these white toggles and pull them to the left. Second, create and clip a new layer set to screen. Paint in some light orange onto the armor, body, and axe. And like before, we'll adjust the blend if settings. Only this time, we're going to remove the orange color from the shadowy areas using the gray toggles. Now we can create and clip 3 new layers into the subject. Set one to soft light, the second to lighten, and the third to screen. Then we're going to use all 3 of these layers to paint various shades of orange onto that subject. We want to focus the lighting onto the subject's edges, but bring light washes of color towards the center as well. On any one of these layers, you can use Blend If to bring back shadows if needed, and keep your brush's flow rate below 10%. If you're using a mouse, you're better off just going down to 1%. And then we can finish up tying our subject into their new environment by adding in some atmosphere. Drag and drop the deep red sunset stock image we used to create the red mist, setting that layer to lighten. Flip and adjust the mist so that it ends up right below the subject's waist. Feel free to squish it down to give it more of a horizontal look. Then let's add a layer mask and mask out the top portion of the clouds, making sure there are no harsh edges and everything blends nicely. Next, let's create a new layer set to lighten. Now using the same red, orange, and blue colors and that same soft round brush we used earlier, paint blooms of light over the subject and into the sky. We want to keep this very subtle, building the light up slowly using a low flow rate. Always use a low flow rate when painting light. If the effect is too strong still, use a blend if to lessen or remove it from the image's shadows. Next up, let's create a super quick snowstorm effect to finish off that Viking fantasy warrior vibe. The best way to create quick snow, in my opinion, is to use PNG overlays, like these snowy overlays from Envato Elements. So directly above the background layer but below the lighting layers, let's place overlay 17 from that snowpack, setting that layer to overlay. Next, above all other layers, let's drop overlay 8, keeping it set to normal and enlarging it slightly. Now let's drop overlay 1, enlarging it as well, and then setting its layer mode to overlay. To add even more snow, we can duplicate the overlay 1 layer, changing its layer mode to a soft light, and then adjust its placement. The trick is to avoid any patterns in the snow. You can also try flipping the overlay horizontally or vertically. Now, if the snow overlays aren't already, go ahead and convert them into smart objects. Then we can go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and set the angle to 35 with a 113 distance. Then go ahead and copy this same filter onto all of the topmost snowy overlays. This will give everything a sense of movement. Finish up the snow by adding a filter, blur, Gaussian blur to the snow layer set to overlay. Let's give it a radius of 16 to 17, nothing too crazy. Just enough to give it a different texture. And once we're happy with our initial snow overlays, we can then group them all up, just the topmost snow layers, and use a layer mask to remove most of that snow from the subject's face. Not all of it, just a good amount. And if you'd like the snow to be even heavier, in that case you can always duplicate this group or add in even more individual snow overlays. And finally, we can finish up with a good old color grade, starting with a color lookup layer set to edgy amber, with a layer mode of multiply and a 23% opacity. Then a second color lookup layer set to film stock and a 32% opacity. Then a third color lookup layer set to teal orange and a 24% opacity. And finally, a selective color adjustment layer affecting the reds. Yellows. Whites. Grays. And black levels. And that is how to create a Viking portrait in Photoshop. But if that wasn't enough and you're looking to learn even more photo manipulation effects, why not check out some of the other excellent videos that Envato Tuts Plus has to offer. If you liked this video and would like to see more, consider giving us a like and even subscribing if you haven't already. And don't forget to click the little bell icon to be notified of all new videos, including tips, tricks, and tutorials. Happy designing, see you next time.